The hilly, wooded area from the Carter's Lake area to the Talking Rock area was especially important to the Cherokees. The federal road passed through Coosawattee and Old Coosawattee, important Cherokee towns and the site of council and judicial meetings in the 1820s. In 1817, the Cherokee divided their nation into 7 districts, including the Coosawattee District. Coosawattee, located in today's Murray County, was one site of Cherokee councils and courts. Cherokees had meetings in Coosawattee prior to voting and tried people charged with breaking of Cherokee law. In the early 1820s, Major Ridge was Speaker of the Coosawattee Council, and William Hicks, Terrapin Head, and Rising Fawn were members of the council. George Saunders and John Margin were judges. Several Cherokee leaders opposed further incorporation into the scope of the United States authority from Coosawattee in the 1820s. White Path, the figure for whom the White Path Rebellion was named, was an older Cherokee chief from Turniptown near Ellijay. He was angered at unspecified developments among the Chickasaws. Some scholars suspect he did not care for Cherokees' growing efforts to organize their government and assert authority over all Cherokee affairs. Members of the Cherokee National Council removed him from their body in 1825. Other Cherokees opposed new developments in which the Cherokees seemed to be working too closely with Christian missionaries. In 1823, when some Baptists opened a new mission, the Cherokee Council meeting at Coosawattee opposed the building of new mission schools. The Baptist missionary site remained small until 1836, when a number of Cherokees in the area converted to Christianity and were baptized in Talking Rock Creek. The site of Coosawattee lies today under Carter's Lake. The area between Blaine and Talking Rock was also important to the Cherokees. Just east of Blaine and just south of 136 was the site of Fort Noonan, one of the forts the U.S. military used to gather Cherokees in the late 1830s prior to forcing them to move west. Fort Noonan was located on the outskirts of the town of Blaine off Antioch Church Road south of Highway 136. Troops went to the area in the spring of 1838, quickly built a fort, and began the process of rounding up Cherokees who had not left the area. The troops left the fort, forcing a number of Cherokees up the federal road to Ross's Landing by midsummer of that year. Like several of the churches along the route of the federal road, Antioch Baptist Church dates back to the antebellum period. In this section of Pickens County, just a few miles east of Blaine, were the sites of the Cherokee communities of Tolone and Saundersville and the Christian missionary station called Carmel. In the early 1800s, this area was one of the more heavily settled spots along the road. Saundersville was located just west of the intersection where 136 turns right toward Talking Rock. Saundersville consisted in part of the homes and businesses of Cherokee brothers George and John Saunders. John Saunders ran what one traveler called a very good house of entertainment on the road. Saunders Mill was on Mountain Creek, just northwest of George Saunders' home. George Saunders was one of the younger Cherokee chiefs connected to several acts of conflict. The son of a Revolutionary War soldier and a Cherokee mother, he was a creditor and tavern keeper in Saundersville. In 1808, Saunders opposed an American attempt to bring iron workers into Cherokee territory. He was also a vocal opponent of Cherokee immigration, when others were suggesting the only way to control their communities was to move to the west. George Saunders was one of the men, along with James Vann and the Ridge, later called Major Ridge, who planned and committed the murder of Doublehead, completing the task in 1807 at Hiwassee in Tennessee. Saunders may also have been the murderer of James Vann. Standing between the fork of the Federal Road to the west and the Ellijay Road to the north was Tolone, the site of the Carmel Missionary Station. Carmel was important as an occasional meeting place in the early 1800s and housed American missionaries who tended to support the interests of Cherokees. Congregationalist and Presbyterian missionaries organized and built Carmel Missionary Station at the Cherokee site of Tolone in 1819. It was the second missionary station to the Cherokees in Georgia after Spring Place. Supported by the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, the Congregationalists at Carmel faced a series of challenges. The ministers at Carmel faced the typical missionary problem of trying to get along with and show respect for people while also trying to convert them to Christianity. Some had a hard time with the first. Reverend Moody Hall, for example, was especially displeased by Cherokees' penchant for ball playing, drinking, conjuring, playing and enjoying leisure on Sundays, and offering and expecting hospitality from all corners, including ministers. When in 1824 Moody Hall refused to share food with some hungry Cherokees, one man named Pritchett threatened him and his wife with a knife. 6 months later, one of George Saunders' sons walked toward Hall's home armed with a gun, in what Hall took to be a threatening manner, and Hall believes some Cherokees made or planned another attempt on his life not long after that. Another minister, Daniel Buttrick, tried to be less condescending toward the Cherokees. Dedicating much of his adult life to missionary work at Carmel and a missionary station at Brainerd in Tennessee, he learned the Cherokee language and described the Cherokees as thoughtful, inquisitive people who, he thought, were descended from one of the lost tribes of Israel. Still, Buttrick wrote in his diary in 1828 that, "My preaching respecting idleness, Sabbath-breaking, and especially conjuring, and my determined public opposition to them, has excited some feeling against me." Tuolumne was important as a meeting site. Cherokee and U.S. officials sometimes met there, and the U.S. put one of the few post offices in Cherokee territory in Carmel. And Major Ridge was there, perhaps spending some time at the missionary station, in 1831, when Daniel Buttrick received a newspaper with a story about the federal government's decision to move all Indians west of the Mississippi River. Later, Buttrick was one of the Christian missionaries who signed a letter protesting the policy of Indian removal. Start the next leg of the trip in downtown Jasper.